Hello, I'm Patrick Sheldon. Welcome to the Committee on BEN, the Business and Employment News Network. We discuss the world through the lens of jobs, and I'm pleased to welcome our first guests, Anthony Hayden-Guest and Brett Sensitz. Anthony is a writer for ArtNet, The Daily Beast, and the author of 6 books. And Brett is someone who can give us a window into a rarefied world. He's managing partner of Gotham Bar and Grill, a restaurant that has long been ranked among the best in the United States. There's talk around the country about a higher minimum wage. The restaurant business seems to employ the greater number of workers earning the minimum wage. So, Brett, what do you think of that?
Well, I think it's challenging for us as operators to have a higher minimum wage. Certainly, wage inflation is something that we have to constantly monitor and manage in order to maintain profitability. On the flip side, I think that minimum wage, we voluntarily last year raised our minimum wage at the restaurant to $9 an hour, which was slightly above the state standard as well as the federal. Now it's being pushed to 11, some say 12, and arguably it's going to head up towards 15. I think in preparation for that, what we're doing is looking at how we manage the restaurant and see if there is a way we can manage it with less employees. Simply because we have 120 employees, and we have to manage our payroll very closely, or raise prices.
And your labor demands fluctuate on any given night. Do you have certain nights when you need every man on board?
It's never that we have 120 employees on board at any given moment, because we have 2 different shifts. We have lunch and dinner, so we have half the staff in the morning and afternoon, and then half at night. There is fluctuation in business levels, and we try to manage that on a daily basis as well.
So my next question is going to be about your reputation. You're in the business as progressive, but you must have an opinion about organic. Should food all be organic? And how about treatment of farm animals and portion size? These are all making the news now. What do you think of these?
Well, I mean, I think the organic movement has done tremendous good things for the American consumer. It's made people more aware of how their food is farmed or brought to table, and that's good. I think that the government regulation is questionable, and some of the practices that are allowed in organic are not as good as some of the local farms that they won't use certain chemicals, whereas under organic law you can use certain chemicals. So the term organic is good. I think it is easily misunderstood by the public to mean completely lacking in the use of pesticides or chemicals, when in fact there are chemicals allowed. And there are farmers who won't use them because they object to what's in these chemicals. I think the greatest thing that's happened is that people become aware of how their food is grown, and then the proliferation of the farmer's market. Because you go to a farmer's market and you sit there and you talk to your farmer. They're the ones at the stands. And we've been a long proponent and have done a lot of work with the green markets in New York City. And you go down to Union Square on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday, and you ask your farm how they grew the carrots, and he's going to tell you. And you have a direct relationship, which is, I think, unique. Not necessarily unique, but it's important and valuable because it's a human connection.
Well, speaking of the discussions of more is known about how these factory farms work, and the discussion of animal cruelty and such. Does this bind your hands when it comes to planning a restaurant menu? Is it difficult to work with that?
Well, if you're committed to that, it makes it more difficult, perhaps, and more expensive. But when it comes to opening a restaurant, I think there's still a lot of faith and trust placed into chefs and restaurateurs, and it may be misplaced in some cases, but oftentimes the people who are making the food do care about their customers. So you see that the cooks, the chefs, are looking for the best product they can find, and that will generally lead them to the better grown vegetables or meats.
Now, Anthony, you have been to restaurants on both continents. Do we eat too much in America? Are the portion size way out of line, as they say?
Well, if one, one imagines, one reads about these hugely overweight Americans, and of course there are parts of America where that is very true, but it's certainly not New York. The cities I know best are Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, basically coastal cities, and you see probably fewer overweight people here than in London, as a matter of fact.
Is this a factor in planning? Do you actually pay attention to what the public wants versus what they should have?
Yes, I mean, it's definitely, we certainly do. And I think portion size you'll see continuing to shrink on tables in restaurants in the United States. Tom Colicchio being somebody who recently announced that he was eliminating all entrees at his flagship Colicchio & Sons here in New York, and he is going to offer just appetizer size plates, and you can order as many as you want. So it's an awareness that is happening, and it's going to continue. Do we factor it in? Yes, but we also factor in that people coming to our restaurant are going to pay $50 for a steak, and you don't want to give them 2 little pieces of meat. You want to give them a perceived value. So we tried to balance that line.
What about portion size? Is it a factor when planning the
menu at Gotham? Yes, it's obviously a big topic in the industry at the moment, with Tom Colicchio announcing that at his restaurant, Colicchio & Sons, he's eliminating the entree and going to all smaller size portions or appetizer size, and people can order as much as they want. At Gotham, we're concerned with not only the consumer perspective on the size, but also on their perception of the value that we're giving them. So if they're going to pay $50 to have a steak at Gotham, we don't want them to feel like it's, we're taking advantage of them. Right. So we try to balance it.
What do you think of that with the balance?
Well, I just personal bio here. When I first came here, which was the late 70s, for New York magazine, I would go out and Sunday go to Palm or Palm 2, and the meals were substantial.
Mm-hmm.
You think, wow, New York's great. Now, I often go to some quite famous restaurants and quite expensive restaurants where the description on the menu is more substantial than the meal. You think, this is the thing you spent 10 minutes explaining,
I understand that. I wanted to ask you a little more about your history with restaurants. You've worked at some famous ones, including Daniel. You've got a great deal of experiences. What changes have you seen in the business in all those years you've been working?
Well, I mean, I think some of the things that we've already touched on have been some of the biggest changes. I think consumer awareness, I think that people today don't seem to be able to get enough information about their food, where it came from. I mean, people are constantly asking us, where are chickens? And it's not just a joke from a TV show. It's literally, they come in and they say, where are you getting your chickens? Where are you getting your duck? Where's your beef coming from? So we now resort to basically putting it on the menu so that it's out there in the open. So there's this transparency. And the second thing that has happened is that people, you see a lot more people who with allergies, with dietary restrictions, and chefs are more and more willing to accommodate that. It used to be, hey, I'm the chef, this is the dish, if you don't want to eat here, then don't come here. That attitude has really changed.
Cooking shows are some of the most popular things on television and on the web right now. Does this give you a clientele that's better educated, or do they know too much about too little?
Well, I'm not sure how I feel about the cooking television. It tends to, I think, deride cooking more than it does uplift it. I mean, it's very casual, and it tends to not take cooking as seriously as I think we do. So does it affect our consumer? Not really, other than the fact that it will drive us some business because people are more and more educated, as you said, and aware. I'm not sure I'm answering your question very well.
Let me put it another way. When the people watch cooking shows on television, they might take an interest in the business. What advice do you give them? Where do you steer them?
Well, I'll tell you the one thing that we have is a lot of people coming out of cooking school with greater expectations than the business can bear. In other words, people thinking that they're going to be a chef within 2 years of graduating from the CIA and expecting wages to reflect that. which is, you know, it's a skill that is learned by doing if you're cooking. And that is the old way. It was an apprenticeship that you would cook with this chef, and then you would move and cook with another chef, and you would learn various techniques from these chefs. And there's a lot of intuitiveness, I think, that goes along with cooking well that is, you know, I don't think you get that on the television.
Well, let me ask Anthony, what would you like to see change in restaurants as far as service, food? What would you like to see? And I'll ask you both.
By the way, I assume when we talk about the CIA, we're talking about the Culinary Institute.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Very good.
Okay.
Not Foggy Bottom.
Good point.
I don't know. I think New York restaurants are tremendous, actually. And I like the Gotham Bar and Grill. I can't think of any spectacular changes I would introduce, no.
No? What do you see ahead? What would change in the business if you had your way?
Well, I think the changes that we're seeing, that we've already touched on, are very positive. And so I'd like to see those continue. I do think that I'd like to see attention paid to health and nutrition, which I think is becoming more and more of a topic. And as chefs and as cooks become more aware of the benefits, the health benefits, it will happen naturally. So I think that kale salad, I mean, you can't go anywhere now and not get a kale salad. When I was growing up, I never even heard of kale. So I think, and that's because people want kale. They think it's nutritious. So the chef's job is to make it taste good, which can be challenging with kale.
We'll get into more about changes in restaurants, so stay with us. This has been the Business and Employment News Network. I'm Patrick Sheldon. In a moment, our panelists discuss service in restaurants.